Hey everybody, Kenny here. So a few things before we get started. First is that, as you can see, I'm recording this before the reveal of the new league. So whatever the new league is going to be is irrelevant to the builds that I'm presenting. Second is that this is going to be the first set of videos that I'm going to be recording without my noise gate. So I'm not sure how this is going to end up sounding. So these are kind of an experiment, just to see like if it's okay for me to record this way now. Also, as always, this is a very casual Path of Exile channel. I do not make builds for people who plan on dumping hundreds of hours into a single league. This is not the content for you. Like, you know, there's plenty of people out there who make that kind of content. I'm not one of them. I make builds for people who only really have like maybe 30 plus hours to spend on a league. And, you know, if they're like really addicted to it, maybe they'll do a full 100 hours in a single league. You know, like that's really the like the people that I'm making this for. Like people who, you know, they don't really have the time to go and like look up like, you know, oh, what skills are doing something that I might want to play around with. You know, like that's really what my builds are for. Like it is not for the really hardcore audience. And with that out of the way, let's get on with the premise for this series of builds. So ever since they've been added to the game, I have been on the hunt for the new transfigured gems. You know, I just do regular runs of the labyrinth whenever I have a little time. So as of this recording, I have about 2/3 to 3/4 of all of the transfigured gems that are currently in the game. And all of these builds are going to be based around the ones that I found to be the most interesting that I played around with. And with that, let's move on to the build. So fortunately, since I posted my first video of this league on a Friday, that gave me enough time to have actually seen that video and heard what the video sounded like without my noise gate on it. So I will never be turning that filter off again. I'm going to put this little bit in just to let you know that the sound won't be like that one, or my voice. I've had to re-record all of my build explanation sections. That way I can make sure that it's as good as it can be. And I hopefully added a noise gate kind of effect to the disclaimers at the start of the video. So hopefully that sounds a bit better than it did in the double build video that I did. I just want to keep this in for the last two videos in this series so that you understand why it is that the first video and the second two videos sounded very different.
But a moment's respite?
So while certainly the most boring of the builds that I've presented during this series, this is actually, in my opinion, like the most effective out of all of the new skill combinations that I've shown. Not in terms of damage really, but in terms of being able to get damage out of a build that doesn't really have a lot of damage in it. It's a very tanky build that allows you to deal decent damage. Our dual strike, we can see 10k damage, pretty good. Pretty good damage for a character that isn't really like super damage focused. If we look in our tree here, our biggest investments to get the most damage out of this is that we're invested in lots of attack speed and crit chance. Crit chance and crit damage. And we have some investment in mace damage, a little bit in melee damage, but it's mostly the crit chance, crit damage, and attack speed that are, that we're getting the most damage out of. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure almost all of the damage in this build actually just comes from this little cluster right here. So this investment of 5 points that we're seeing here, I believe actually does almost all of the damage for this build. If we look here, now I know that, so while the actual gameplay showcase and disclaimers were all recorded before the league reveal, this I'm recording after the league reveal because of how bad the audio came out in the first video. So I am aware that there is a change coming to this cluster here, where this is going to be changed, so it's no longer going to do 12% damage, it's going to be like 8% damage, but also give you some block chance. But so this is, so you get a little less damage from here, but you get damage and attack speed from both of these. Then this one here, Dexterity, gets you increased damage with your main hand weapon while dual wielding, and increased attack speed with your offhand weapon while dual wielding. And then by getting a dual wield mastery, increasing your damage while wielding 2 different weapon types just perfectly allows for this specific skill gem. So like this skill gem itself, you get that big bonus to your main hand weapon, and it makes it that you're dealing, all the damage is from your main hand weapon, but all of the attack time is from your offhand weapon. So you can use the slowest weapon in the game, Gavel, that has very high physical damage, just innately, and support it with an offhand weapon that is fairly quick. So, I mean, obviously, there are faster weapons that you could put in your offhand, but like C-Jax is pretty quick, and if you have an attack speed bonus on it, then you can make it even faster. And the reason that my combo is mace and axe is because I am supporting my dual strike of ambidexterity with trauma, and trauma can only be used if you're using an axe, mace, scepter, or stave. I was trying to say staff, but I was reading stave and became stave. But, axe, mace, scepter, or staff. And so, by having this combo, like the fastest weapon that you're going to find in those categories are going to be axes. You're not going to find maces that are faster than axes. You're not going to find scepters that are faster than axes. You're definitely not going to find staves that are faster. Mind you, staves are two-handed weapons, but you get what I'm saying. The most value you're going to get out of this is by doing this combo. So, big damage mace with the fastest axe you can find. And then you just get massive benefit out of having this gem with this cluster, with these particular upgrades. That mastery with this notable passive, with this gem, that's just massive damage. This is the least investment possible to get this kind of damage in the game. Like I said, there is some other damage stuff in here. We have We have some melee damage here. We have some melee damage here. And we have some physical damage from maces here. But, you know, like, more than half of the damage is just from here. Like, you know, it's incredible how much damage you get out of this if you happen to have this gem. And along with this gem, we're also using Cast on Critical Strike to use another transfigured gem, Animate Weapon of Self-Reflection. Animate Weapon of Self-Reflection summons up to 6 copies of your main hand weapon, which become like spectral bodyguards that attack enemies for you. So it's a very cool combo. Like, I mean, obviously, they're not super effective. Like, this is a very strong weapon, but we're not invested in minion damage. So it's not like it's doing a ton for you. But by having, like, you know, your little minions like coming out and attacking with you, you have additional sources of aggro. You're constantly summoning little tanks for you. Because while like this is a very tanky build, so we're highly invested in armor, evasion, resistances, life. Well, we have, like, you know, lots of investment in our defenses going here. We aren't actually invested in any of the stuff that is meant to save you. You know, so there's no investment in spell suppression. There's no investment in block chance, and like there's no avoidance in here. And we are fully invested in survival through having very high defenses, along with having pretty decent regeneration. You know, not great regeneration, but pretty decent regeneration. And just like other builds that I've shown in this series, we're using automation with Immortal Call and Enduring Cry with Call to Arms. However, our Enduring Cry is also being supported by Corrupting Cry, so that we have an additional source of damage against enemies that are within our Cry range. So we're just passively kind of like applying corrupted blood to enemies without having to have any, you know, by having to use Corrupted Fever or anything like that. And of course, we're also using Assassin's Mark so that we have even higher chance to crit, which we can see that our crit chance is decent. You know, 20% chance to crit is pretty good, because the Gavel does not have a great crit chance. It's only 5% to crit with Gavel. We have a decent crit chance, but when we crit by having Assassin's Mark, we deal a lot more damage, and because we are very heavily invested in Critical Strike Multiplier, we're able to get a very nice amount of additional damage anytime we crit. We also have Summon Stone Golem as an additional source of life regeneration, and Rejuvenation Totem for the same purpose. So you saw in the showcase, you know, like pretty much any time I run into a group that's not just like normal enemies, then I'll put down my Rejuvenation Totem and then just go to town with my Dual Strike, and then, like, you know, then like resummon my Golem and Totem as necessary. And of course Vitality for even more regen, and Leap Slam because it allows me to use it with a Gavel. Because for a long time I have not used Leap Slam in any of my builds, and it's made me sad. In terms of our Ascendancy, I have gone into the Templar area in order to get Guardian, which makes it that every 4 seconds we regenerate 50% of our life over 1 second. We get increased recovery rate from our auras. Like, the block stuff doesn't really matter because we're not invested in block, but you know, it's something. But, you know, basically we did it for the recovery is why I got Guardian. Then I went to the Marauder area to get Juggernaut. We get our big bonus to accuracy. We can't be chilled, we can't be stunned. We have increased damage per endurance charge. We gain endurance charges every second if you've been hit recently, which you may have noticed is another reason why I used Trauma. Because what Trauma lets us do is as soon as we hit an enemy, we have our endurance charges. You know, so we're immediately pumping our damage the second we hit any enemy. because trauma counts as us taking a hit. I didn't see anything in the patch notes for the new league saying that they're going to change that, so I think this is still safe to use. Like I said, the only changes that I noticed that affect this build at all is that this is going to be a little less effective. And this little node right here, you're going to get a little less damage out of that. This skill is actually getting pumped, so you're actually going to get more damage out of this. And I didn't see anything for the Scion. I mean, there are Scion Ascendancy passives that are being affected, but none of the ones that I'm using here are part of that. But unlike my other builds, I am going to go over the equipment that this character is wearing, because for the other three, since they were caster builds, what they were wearing didn't really matter all too much. And like their weapons mattered in some cases, but for the most part, like, you know, like the build is what actually did it. It wasn't really the gear at all. But since this is a very tanky build, I just want to show like what I have here. That way you know that you probably want around this level, if not better, for yourself. If you want to do this, if you want to do a similar setup. So for our gloves, we have, so all of our equipment is armor and evasion. So on all 4 pieces, armor, evasion. For our gloves, I've crafted on some additional armor and evasion. I have a nice amount of maximum life, good amount of resistances. For our boots, you know, they just had tons of affixes on them, so I couldn't craft anything else on. We have a nice amount of regeneration, of life regeneration rate, more armor and energy shield, a flat evasion and armor, and some extra resistances and stats. These were very good boots. For our chest, crafted on some additional cold and lightning resistance. I probably could have afforded to convert some of these to the chaos resistance, but I never did. All I can say about that. We have some extra life on here. For our rings, I crafted on the extra chaos resistance, and we have some good amount of max life, as well as some extra dexterity and some resistances. For our other ring is another 2-stone ring that I crafted chaos resistance onto. It already had some implicit chaos resistance, so a lot of our chaos resistance comes from this ring. So it's mainly just for the resistances and doesn't really do anything else for us. Our Onyx Amulet, so it's there for the stats. I crafted on some additional regeneration and mana. And it already had some implicit regeneration, so we get a nice amount of regeneration from this and no resistances. Good amount of flat life and extra crit chance. Our helmet, crafted on some extra fire resist. And we got some okay amount of extra life and some flat armor and evasion on it. So pretty good piece overall. Once again, I'll go over the weapons. So our gavel has a good amount of increased physical damage, has some added physical damage, has some cold resistance, has some extra flat accuracy, and our axe has some little bit of lightning damage on it, has some bleed chance and increased bleeding, but we're not really a bleed build. And most importantly, the extra attack speed. Our belt gives us a very nice amount of extra maximum life, gives us some chaos resistance, and I crafted on some additional chaos resistance. So I tried to be as tanky as I could with all of my selections for my gear. And it's probably the only time I'll ever go over my flasks in a build video. For my granite flask, I just have the enchantment so that whenever it reaches full charges, then it just uses itself. And it has the regular affixes that has additional charges and increased armor effect. That way, you know, we get the most out of our armor possible whenever our flask is up. And I believe that's everything. As I mentioned, you know, like even though like it's not like super flashy like a lot of builds, it is very effective. This is a character that I was able to do a lot of map progress with, because, you know, like I don't really worry about dying, even though they don't have the spell suppression, even though they don't have block chance, you know, they don't have like any of the other forms, you know, the supplemental forms of defenses. Like it still is very tanky regardless. It gets by very well, and I highly recommend trying this out if you're someone who doesn't mind taking things slower and, you know, and just doing just a beatdown build with a melee character. And, you know, melee is getting pumped quite a bit this league, so it's very possible that if you were to do this, your gavel might be insane. I actually haven't looked at like what they did for the different weapons. I know that they said they pumped a lot of the weapons, a lot of the melee weapons. But, you know, so gavels might be nuts now. Like this skill might be absolutely off the walls, bonkers damage when the new league hits. I don't know. Like I'm not gonna be playing it just because, you know, it's like I don't have time to be doing a town management thing. Like, you know, like it's really cool stuff. Like I love that, you know, they're being so experimental with it and kind of turning this league into like a pre-alpha for Path of Exile 2. But, you know, I don't have time for it. It's a very, like, there's a reason this is a very casual Path of Exile channel, because I have to play Path of Exile very casually. Anyways, thanks everybody for checking me out. Found any of these tips useful? Okay, doing our YouTube stuff. Comment, subscribe. Until next time, stay Victus, Fires and Amaris, and bye.